It's the High School Insiders on ESPN New Hampshire.
Great moments are born great opportunity.
Nick Anastas.
If you put your effort and concentration into playing to your potential, to be the best that you can be, I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game, in my book, we're going to be winners.
For the best local sports coverage around the Granite State.
On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch.
With interviews from local coaches, players, your kids, sisters, and brothers.
I want you to put each other in your hearts forever.
Here's Nick Anastas.
I get the yellow bell. You believe in miracles? Yes!
All right, we are joined by Jeremy Leveille of the New Hampshire Notebook here to preview NHIAA football both Friday and Saturday night. Actually want to begin on Saturday with you, Jeremy. Two top 5 teams in our FNL poll squaring off, including the top-ranked team, Pinkerton, on the road against upstart Salem. Both teams are 2-0. What do you look for there?
Well, I look for it to be a test, and we're going to be able to see, Nick, if this Salem team is for real or not. Salem is the upstart team. They were champions a few years ago. It had a good run back when, they had Frederick, Canoni, and Jake. But, then they got all those guys graduated. They started to feel the effects of Wyndham opening up. Coach Gaddy left, and they kind of struggled for those couple of years there up until now. So we're going to see. This is definitely a good test for them. They showed that they can play with the big boys. A lot of people have South up there, top 6, 7 teams in the state going into the season. They beat them by 3 touchdowns. But this is definitely going to be their biggest test yet against Pinkerton. I think most people, for now at least, have Pinkerton number 1 in the state. So I'm going to be looking to see if they can compete with Pinkerton. If they can give them a game, if they beat them, it'll definitely be considered an upset. And we'll know for sure that they're for real at that point.
Yeah, I just am concerned a little bit about the size or lack thereof for Salem when compared to Pinkerton. Pinkerton perhaps front to back, maybe the biggest team in the state regardless of division, biggest physically as well as student enrollment. But, it just seems like the Astros have a built-in advantage in the trenches, and Salem's going to need a lot, I think, up front to overcome that, right?
Oh, I certainly agree. When I've seen Pinkerton play this year, the only time I've seen him so far was at the Queen City Jamboree. But, one of the things that I did note in my write-up of the Jamboree is, like you mentioned there, the size in the trenches of those guys. There was 3, they got 3 guys right up front that are, up around 270, 280 pounds and, over 6 feet tall. One of them, Sturdivant, and a couple other ones that, they just imposing size up front. And plus they have some really tough, fast, hard-hitting linebackers led by Jason Hansen. And, the secondary, they're flying around hitting people. It's a very tough defense. In the Jamboree, Concord didn't even score on them in that 2 quarters. And we all know what the kind of offense Concord has with Leo Sudi, one of the top running backs in the state, and he wasn't really able to do anything against them. It's going to be a very good test, and the size of the trenches could definitely be a factor, and we'll see if Salem tries to combat that by spreading the field a little bit and maybe throwing the ball or trying to run outside the tackles and maybe take advantage of their speed a little bit.
Yeah, they do have some weapons. Austin Homsey, we know him in special teams, and Charles Sabanda has made a name for himself as well as guys who can make plays for the Blue Devils when they have the football in their hands. Jeremy Leveille of the New Hampshire Notebook is our guest, previewing this weekend's games. That Pinkerton-Salem game is Saturday. Biggest matchup, I think, Friday, Jeremy, is probably the game you are at. It's our Peters Kia game of the week. Number 10, Winnicott at number 3, Bedford. It's a rematch of the Division II championship from a couple seasons ago. Bedford at 2-0, Winnicott at 1-1. Who's the favorite here? Bedford?
Yes, Bedford I think is definitely the favorite. Winnicott, they're up there. It's just that they they got to win the first week. Second week they had a tough loss to Concord. They gave Concord a tough game. Lost by a couple scores. Concord's definitely up there, one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the state. But given that, I think right now the top 3, in my opinion, are Pinkerton, Bedford, and Concord. You can argue about what order they should go in. you got to at least put Pinkerton ahead of Concord for now, at least, just because in that jamboree they did beat them 14-0 in one half football at least. But yeah, I think Bedford's the favorite, although health is a little bit of a concern for Bedford. It wasn't a factor when they beat Portsmouth pretty easily last weekend, and that shows just how deep this Bedford team is. I think numbers-wise, as far as number of kids in the program, they probably have more than anybody except for Pinkerton. This Bedford, they have great numbers, and a lot of kids in the weight room all summer long, and that's how they were able to overcome those injuries. Last week in that big win over Portsmouth, they had lost their starting running back Mike Collins. According to Coach Hines, he had broke his leg in 4 places on last Wednesday during practice.
Wow!
And Colin Cashin goes in, the backup running back, and rushes for over 100 yards. So that's just the kind of depth they have. And out with a broken jaw is one of their top linebackers, Thomas O'Rourke. Suffered that over the summer, and they got other guys, filling in at the linebacker core to plug those gaps. So they're a very deep team. I think they're the favorite, but especially playing at home is their first home game. But Winnicott is looking to get back on the winning track. I think they have some talent, and they're looking to pull the upset.
Elsewhere, Londonderry, another top 10 team in our poll. They come in at 8th in Week 3. At Nashua North, the Titans trying to reel after a loss against Alvern. Londonderry, are they for real? 2-0, they've looked impressive in both victories, a chance to jump out 3-0 for the first time in years. We know about that so-called three-headed monster of Ryan, Bishop, and Fairweather. Is Londonderry as good as advertised right now in your mind, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think they're up there. I mean, I think they're a top 5-6 team. Are they a title contender? Can they play with Pinkerton? I mean, as of right now, I think a lot of people consider in that division, Pinkerton is the favorite, not only in their division, but possibly the best team in the whole state. And Londonderry and Salem, are the 2 teams in that division that it's like, okay, are they going to make a run here? Could either of those teams, play with Pinkerton and maybe give them a run in that conference? Or is it Pinkerton's conference and Londonderry and Salem are, trying to go for second place? That remains to be seen. I've been impressed by both Salem and Londonderry. From what I've seen of both teams, I was a little bit more impressed with Londonderry. They have playmakers on both sides of the ball. They have some decent size up front, good speed. They're tough. They got a new head coach who's breathing some new life into them, and there's a new sense of energy and hope in that program. And I think they'll have a pretty easy time with North. I think they're gonna cruise against North, who's been struggling this season to compete with teams, and having their running back Demetrius Jackson transfer to a prep school certainly didn't do them any favors.
Mm-hmm.
I think Londonderry, they're going to have their way with North, and then we'll see when they start to take on some of the upper echelon teams. Just how are they for real? We'll find out when they start taking on teams like Salem and Pinkerton down the road.
You're listening to the High School Insiders here on ESPN New Hampshire. We're talking with Jeremy Leveille of the New Hampshire Notebook, previewing this weekend's action in high school football. Other games in D1, Portsmouth licking their wounds after a blowout loss against Bedford at home last week. Memorial, meanwhile, picked up one of their bigger wins in years, beating crosstown rival Manchester Central convincingly to even their record at 1-1. Both of these teams, Jeremy, have a common opponent. That is Bedford. The Bulldogs whooped up on Memorial in the second half of Week 1 and, of course, beat Portsmouth last week by 30 points. Which team you like here, Jeremy? Both teams, I think, with some weapons offensively, and both teams can put some points up.
Yeah, I like Portsmouth, but I think it's going to be a really good game that could go either way. I think Portsmouth is the favorite. I think they have, and the reason is because I think they have a little bit more on defense. Both teams can certainly put points up on the board and have a lot of weapons. But I think Portsmouth is a little tougher, on defense that has more kids that can step up and hit people and make plays on defense. So I think that gives them the edge. Both teams did take their, are licking off some wounds from losses to Bedford. Bedford had an easier time with Memorial than they did with Portsmouth. But a key is going to be health-wise for Portsmouth. They had a couple of kids get hurt. in the game last week against Bedford, and also will Michael Torr finally come back? According to Coach Pafford, he wasn't sure if it was going to be this week, maybe it's the week after when he's able to return to the lineup, but that'll certainly be a factor as well. But yeah, I like Portsmouth in that game for them to get back on the winning track after last week's loss to Bedford.
Again, Jeremy Leveille, New Hampshire Notebook, is our guest. Nick Anastas in studio, joined now by my co-host, Rich Flynn.
Jeremy, I want to talk about Michael Torr real quick. I mean, he's a big bruising back who has deceptive speed. What kind of dimension will he add to the offense when he comes back? Because I picture kind of a thunder-lightning combination with Joey Auger when Michael's able to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to definitely be that type of dynamic with Auger, the speed back, and Torr, the power back up the middle. And the thing is I think it not only will add, have the second back there in the backfield, but it will give them more balance between the run and the pass. Portsmouth is known as a team that likes to throw the football downfield and throw to a lot of different receivers. They have lots of weapons, a lot of kids that can catch the ball. But last week, with Torr not being in there, it put a lot of pressure on quarterback Connor DeCesare to make plays. And didn't have a great game, a lot of incompletions, a lot of interceptions. And, it was kind of tough for him with a lot of pressure on him, having to throw the ball so much, and the running game just wasn't producing as it probably would have if they had both Auger and Torr in there. So they'll have not only balance with the running game, but balance between the rushing and the passing game. Definitely, they're looking forward to hopefully eventually sometime soon when they're getting Michael Torr back in the lineup. And not only that, but he also helps them on defense. He also starts with at linebacker for them, so it'll make their defense even better as well when he returns.
Yeah, he'll help Portsmouth for sure when he does step back onto the field. Want to take a look at another couple of Saturday games with you, Jeremy, before we let you go. Again, a lot of the top teams in our poll squaring off against one another. Saturday afternoon, we see number 4 Exeter at number 7 Goffstown. The Grizz, of course, took Concord basically to the end in week number 1, followed that up with a nice Saturday win in week number 2. Exeter undefeated 2 weeks into the season, and that defense looking very, very good right now. Are the Blue Hawks a road favorite at Goffstown Saturday?
Yeah, I think Exeter is a slight favorite. I think that's going to be a fun game and one that could go either way. I'm actually still up in the air if I'm going to go to that game or Salem Pinkerton. I'll probably decide when I wake up on Saturday morning which one I'll do. But I think that's going to be a fun game. We'll find out how good both teams are. I think it's a measuring stick for both teams because Exeter, I think a lot of people consider them as one of the top teams, and they're 2-0, but both wins, have been kind of narrow. They haven't been blowing teams out, and typically Exeter's not a team that blows teams out. They slowly grind out drives. They'll have an 8-minute drive that ends in a 2-yard touchdown run most of the time. So they typically don't blow teams out. But we'll still see. If they are up there, if they're an upper echelon team, it'll be a good measuring stick for them, and as well as Goffstown. They had a narrow loss. They competed very well with Concord, and had a blowout win last week. So we'll kind of get a better look, another sense as to how good they are and if they are for real. Goffstown is a team that can definitely put some points up on the board. Exeter and really spread the field and has some really fast players. Like Connor Bork that can really get yards and a lot of yards at a short amount of time. Exeter, the slow, grinded out, 3 yards kind of team, move down the field. Discipline is the key word when you're talking about Exeter, and they have more size up front. Look for Neil Vorster, the big lineman, to dominate both sides of the line, and how Goffstown's able to match up with him will be key in the trenches. I know Goffstown does have a little bit of size up front, but I'm not sure if they have anybody that's 6'3", 270 that can match up with Neil Vorster. But it'll certainly be a fun one over there, and one that I think could go either way at Goffstown, but I'd say Exeter's a slight favorite.
Jeremy, would you concur that teams better beat Exeter now because they're only going to get better as the season prolongs? That offense is going to get more seasoning. Grant LeBute is only going to get better as the season goes on, and the defense isn't going anywhere, hasn't let up a single point all season long through 2 games. Would you concur that teams better beat the Blue Hawks now because they're only going to get better and scary good as the season goes on.
Yeah, I think they'll get better, but at the same time, they are a program that down to 8th grade, down to 6th grade, they run the same system. They, their 8th grade quarterback, their 9th grade quarterback, and all their running backs, they down through their feeder program. And this is why they've been so successful year after year, is because Coach Ball drills it into them. Every team, JV, varsity, freshman teams, middle school, they all run the same plays, the same system. So they come up to varsity and they're already prepared. And that's why they're so disciplined and fundamentally sound. I think they're the kind of team that because of that, they're just consistent. And from the beginning of the season to the end, and because there's a lot of new players. They graduated some good talent last year. And so there's some new faces in there that as the season goes, we'll get more used to it. But these new faces have been running that same system probably since they were in 6th, 7th grade. So I think they'll get better, but they're also going to be disciplined from game one, and they'll be disciplined in the last game of the season as well.
Let's stay with Saturday. 2 other games on the docket. Salem-Pinkerton, which you already mentioned, is going to be a great night game, and I'm torn between going to that one or my alma mater, Merrimack, who's 2-0, and they'll be playing at Stello Stadium for the second week in a row against Nashua South, who's trying to get their first win of the game. Which game is more intriguing to you? Because Merrimack, we're going to find out how for real they are going up against an angry and anxious Purple Panthers team to get their first win. And then on the other side of the docket, we have Pinkerton, who's number 1, versus an up-and-coming Salem team who looks very good.
Yeah, I think the more intriguing game, in my opinion, Salem and Pinkerton, just because, they're both 2-0 and, 2 of the top 5 teams in the state right now. You kind of have 2 heavyweights going at it. We're not sure quite. We're going to find out how good Salem is. We're not quite sure yet if they can play at that level that Pinkerton is already at and has been playing at for years. But I think that's the more intriguing game. And, not at the same time, though, that Merrimack South game is a very intriguing game as well. Even though it's 2-0 versus 0-2, I think a lot of people would say that it's pretty much a toss-up. I think Merrimack's the favorite, but South is very hungry for a win. And it's been well documented that South, even though they're 0-2, they have a lot of starters coming back from last year. Pretty much everybody's back except for Trevor Knight. So I think they're really hungry, and they want to prove people wrong. Anybody's writing them off already, they want to say, hey, this division is still wide open. Because a lot of teams are struggling in that division between BG and South and North, Alburn. It's anybody's division right now. So they know they're not out of it yet. So I think it's going to be a really good game. And, I wish I could see both teams. They should both be competitive games. And, we'll find out where both Merrimack and South are at. If Merrimack is for real and if South, if they go 0-3, then people might start to doubt them. But I think they're really going to come out firing in that game on Saturday.
Jeremy, we are out of time. We appreciate your time as usual. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you this weekend. We'll talk this weekend. Look forward to the game.
Absolutely. We'll talk tomorrow night. This has been the High School Insiders. Friday Night Lights returns tomorrow. Week number 3, 6 to 11, right here on ESPN New Hampshire. Up next, the Red Sox. Adios.